Hi, Internet.
Hi, Internet. We're back with more Kerbal Space Program.
It's good to see you again. How do you feel about space?
That's great. Today we're going to go see more of it. Specifically, we're going to go to Kerbin's second moon, Minmus, which is a much smaller moon that is much further out, about the distance of from Earth to Earth's moon. And I now have new scientific instruments like a thermometer.
So has there been any research done on the effect of two moons on this planet or around this planet, and why the one is closer than the other and how that works with, I don't know.
Oh yeah, like fan theories about what's up.
Yeah.
So one of the things you'll see is if you see Minmus, there's no real set theories at this point as to the formation of Kerbin's moon, which is just called Moon, M-U-N.
Yeah.
Though thoughts are that well, I'm guessing when they add more science and when they finalize the game, it might be possible to find out what formed it.
I think it's amazing that this game isn't finished. There's so much here.
Oh yeah,
this is
no,
ridiculous.
There's gonna be more. There's just always gonna be more to it. So anyway, I'm using two of these huge solid rocket boosters and also a liquid motor, because I need to be able to get out pretty far.
Yeah.
And also I put some. We're actually gonna put a dude down on this here moon, which I'm landing on the further moon out because it's actually much easier to land on. But we can talk about Minmus more as we start to get there.
Cool.
Because since we'll be landing on it, you will be able to see it up close and personal.
I'm gonna assume.
Oh yeah,
that it's great with a lot of craters.
Oh
shit!
Yep, I kind of fucked up my attempt to recover those solid rocket boosters. But
that could have been you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that the injection stage at least remained stable and did not crashed into. And in the future, I'm not going to put those separatrons on there because that's too much force. So I think one of the solid rocket motors survived, so we can recover that if it's not too badly damaged. But the second one exploded.
What happens if you put too much just junk into space? Because I notice you're very particular about,
I mean, if you put a lot of junk into space, it starts to slow down your game. But one of the more important things that is an actual real thing that is happening in reality in the real world space program is we have so much shit around space that we actually have to time our launch windows because there's a chance that you might run into orbital debris. There's actually a big debris cloud that we wait to pass a lot of times. Launch windows are also usually dictated by rendezvous and when we're trying to go to a planet and stuff like that. But part of it is also there's just so much junk in space. And I keep mentioning, I mentioned a couple times in these videos the Kessler syndrome or the ablation cascade, and that's basically if you've seen the movie Gravity, that's the thing that happens in there. That there's so much debris around the planet right now that it is distinctly possible. Also, you notice takes us a long time to get out to Minmus. We're at 10 days into the trip right now.
Wow.
And there's Minmus.
Oh, look how little.
Oh yeah, we do our first little bit of science, and this is after I added the new science descriptions pack. Whenever I do this, so small, so so the Kessler syndrome is basically a big thing explodes and it creates a big cloud of debris, and that cloud of debris comes out, hits other things that explode, and basically creates this self-sustaining explosion of debris that covers the Earth, so that eventually spreads out and covers the Earth in such a manner that we can't return to space until all the debris is eventually slowed down by the Earth's atmosphere. And it's a thing that can happen. Hopefully, will not happen. But there's a couple things there's a couple of dead satellites that. So you mentioned in the first episode, like, you know, I bet all those satellites up there are dead. And there are a lot of dead satellites in Earth orbit, but we actually planned ahead on this. There is, if a satellite is dying or if it's nearing the end of its mission, one of the last things we do is use its thrusters to boost it into what's called a graveyard orbit.
Oh.
Which is an equatorial orbit that's between low Earth orbit and a geosynchronous orbit. Where basically it's just big enough and far enough away that satellites are unlikely to hit each other, and they're so far apart that the ablation cascade wouldn't happen.
Okay.
There are some. Now that said, there are a bunch of satellites that have failed before we could do that. Like the European Space Agency launched a satellite called it was called like Environment Sat or EnviSat, which is 9 tons, and it's like 33 meters long. Like it's like as big as 2 school buses, basically.
Jeez.
And it was supposed to do a 5-year mission, ended up doing a 10-year mission, and the mission ended because the instruments died. Like they couldn't get in touch with the satellite anymore, and so they said, okay, it's done. And the problem is that it still had propellant left in it. Like they planned to boost it into a graveyard orbit in 2014, but it died. So now we have, and the worst part is because it's an Earth observation satellite, it's in a polar orbit. So there's 2 different kinds of orbits. There's the ones that go around the planet, like this one right here. This is an equatorial orbit, which means it follows the equator, or you have a polar orbit which follows the poles, which means instead of going left to right, it goes up and down. So we have this huge 2 school bus size satellite that is going in an orbit perpendicular to most of our other satellites.
That seems very dangerous. Like,
and it's apparently going so fast. It's apparently so big. It's so massive that just the Earth's atmosphere alone will take 150 years to slow it down.
Wow. Well, so here's a second question, unless there's something that you want to point out in the video right now.
Nah, it's just so you asked like what Minmus is possibly, and fans speculate that given its composition and its orbit around Kerbin, it's likely a captured comet.
Oh, I see.
Because it's like a big old ball of ice and snow.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole bunch of jokes in here. If you see all the comments made, like from up top, it says "so small yet so delicious." All the jokes are that the Kerbins believe it's made out of ice cream or pudding or something.
That's actually kind of cute.
And so we're actually about to land this bitch. But what were you gonna say?
My other question was, like, you know how, like, like in the ocean, tides and currents sort of take all the floating debris that we throw into the ocean, and they've kind of massed together into this like giant island of garbage. So they say.
I did not actually know that.
It's well, the jury's still out on whether it exists or not. There are like a few photos of it supposedly, but like there's no way to track it and there's no way to actually find it because it's constantly moving. But the idea is moving,
and compared to the size of the ocean, it's probably pretty tiny.
Yeah, but the idea is that like all the bottles and debris that we've thrown into the ocean has kind of eventually come together.
Right.
To make this big floating island. That's what the Gorillaz album Plastic Beach was kind of based on.
Huh. Also, brief interruption here. We're actually following our booster down, and it's just close enough that we can watch it impact the surface. So
Yay!
It's not Kerbal Space Program without explosions.
So the question is, I know that space is different and there's no tides or current in space. But would there ever be a possibility of, instead of like just immediately exploding and like going off into a million pieces, that all the debris we've put into space will actually coalesce together into sort of one?
It's unlikely, because the thing is, there's 2 different. If something actually collides in space, The gravitation of the satellites is such, like, there's no currents or anything like that. The gravitation between the two satellites is so small that they wouldn't actually pull each other together to be a big mass. But one of the things you do have to look out for in space is because things are moving so fast, we actually start getting relativistic effects when things collide, which is called a hypervelocity collision. And actually, our satellites are set up for this. That micrometeoroids, like space dust. Our satellites actually have to be grounded a little bit. Oh yeah, all the stuff has turned into ice cream. The goose seems less flat than before. So all the satellites, in addition to having just the micrometeoroid, in addition to having the little ablating layer. Oh yeah, the temperature's just cold enough for a good ice cream cone.
Delicious.
So in addition to the micrometeoroid shields needing to be able to protect from just the damage from like a thing that's moving 13 kilometers per second, they also have to be grounded, because when those little chunks of space debris hit, they start invoking relativistic effects. They hit so hard that they actually create supercharged plasma for a very brief period of time. And so satellites have to be electronically shielded against this, because otherwise there's a chance every time a micrometeoroid hit one of the satellites, it could short something out.
I see.
Because it hits so hard that it creates energy. And also I regretted installing this mod that added visor reflections to the guy's helmet, because you can't see his face. Which is sad, because they have the best expression when they land on another planet. And also here's me just jumping. And you can see how low the gravity of Minmus is, that I'm jumping.
Just jump, and you keep going up, and you eventually land back on Kerbin.
It's actually possible on Minmus using the jetpacks to take a Kerbal into orbit. And so we go here and we gather so much science, and you know what? We gonna plant a flag on this bitch.
Do it. Flag it up.
Flag it up. This is our.
Does it look like? I didn't know if it was gonna look like Jet or not.
This is before I added the Jeb face.
Oh, okay.
And because this is Joemore Kerman, clearly this is named Joemore Flats. And I write some flowery bullshit on the plaque here.
Butts.
I know usually whenever I do... Oh yeah, there we go. I know usually whenever I do my first mission to a place, I usually try to emulate the message that was left by Apollo 11 on the moon. That just simply says, on this day we came to this world we came in peace for all of mankind. And for some reason, just like all those, like all the kinds of, I probably actually butchered that a little bit, but for some reason, all that kind of stuff, you know, just the way that we handled that and all those messages we left there, I don't know, it always makes me really teary-eyed for some reason.
Aw, Matt. Ugh.
Have you ever
space so much?
Have you ever listened? Did you know that they prepared? There was actually a speech prepared for Nixon in case the Apollo 11 astronauts were not able to leave the moon.
I did know that. I didn't read the speech, but I did know that he had 2 speeches prepared.
I do know that. Well, so I don't remember the whole thing off the top of my head, but one of the parts in there is in days of old. We looked to the heavens and we saw heroes of legend. And today, whenever we look to the moon, those heroes are still there, but they are real epic men of flesh and blood.
So nuts. If I can just ruin the tone completely,
sure.
I'd like to imagine that they also baked 2 cakes. One, welcome home. The other, sorry for your loss.
All right, we're gonna plant another flag here because you know what? We just got to a new place, and we got this spaceship's full of flags.
It's nothing but goo and flags in that spaceship.
Just goo and flags. So the Joemore Summit, which is, maybe one day we'll come back here. We'll land with a proper we'll land with a base, and we'll begin proper scientific research.
Does that happen? Spoilers?
I guess you'll just have to wait to see.
I will.
So anyway, and also the fastest way to move around here, you can run, and you can see the guys, I think I might do it a little bit. The guys will actually do this weird little moon hop as they run around. It takes forever, though, and given how low the gravity is on Minmus, it's actually much faster just to jump and use your jetpack. And so we fly back to our ship. Back to Joemore Flats and Minmus Lander 1.
Hey, what do you call an alien with 3 eyes?
I don't know.
An alien.
Because there's 3 eyes in the middle of the wood. Oh yeah, there's his little moon bounce.
Good.
Yeah, no, the ambient music in this is great. I think most of it's actually royalty-free music from Kevin MacLeod.
I think so too, isn't it?
There are some original tracks. Like there's a bunch that are like variations on the main Kerbal Space program, like the main title theme for the game. So now it comes time for us to take off, and taking off from Minmus is actually pretty easy. It's obviously
there's like no gravity.
Yeah, there's no gravity, so I can pretty much pitch over and begin my gravity turn like 3 seconds in.
Nice.
And you see, like, I'm already up to 30 kilometers, which is pretty high for this moon.
A white guy.
So high for a white guy. And for some reason there, it's showing me the moon of Duna, which is way the fuck far away. I don't know why it's doing that. Also, you notice up in the top now on the Kerbal alarm clock, I'm starting to chart the amount of time we have until asteroids start hitting the planets. Yeah, that white dot there, the big one, that's Duna's moon Ike. For some reason, it shows me the icon for that, but not for Duna. And hey, there's all the orbits around Kerbin. And you can see how far away we are from Kerbin right now.
Yeah.
We are super, super far away. Like, it's going to take us about 10 days to get back. And now I'm going to collect all the science off of these instruments because I don't have a strong enough parachute to bring all the scientific instruments back with me. I even grabbed the data off of the thermometer. I try to do temperature scan, but I can't do one above the planet, which is weird because I can do one on the moon. Even though in both cases there is just as much not atmosphere happening. And so, unlike our last voyage to another world, another planetoid, we actually have a much higher Delta V budget this time. But that said, I still make use of the Oberth effect and firing counter to where I was going, so that I don't have to use up an unnecessary amount of fuel just in case things get out of hand.
Where's the farthest point that anyone's ever been in this game?
I mean, people have launched stuff into Solar Escape. If you ask where people have put a thing in this game, oh yeah, glamour shot. If you ask where people have put a thing in this game, if you ask any place where somebody has put a thing in this game, they have put it there. Okay,
I guess the question more is, like, how much is in this game? Like, how much space is programmed?
Pretty much the whole Kerbin solar system, which is called the Kerbal system, which is Kerbal is the inability to scratch your chin is making this EVA nearly impossible. So there is Kerbal, then the closest planet is Moho, then Eve, which is very covered in a very thick layer of clouds, then Kerbin, the third planet from the sun, then Duna, the red planet, and then out from Duna is Drez, which is a rocky planet with no atmosphere or very small amounts of atmosphere, and then there's Jewel, which is a gas giant that has a huge collection of moons that you can land on. And we're setting ourselves up to do an aero capture here. To do an aero capture, you have to hit an periapsis of about 30 kilometers, which is where the atmosphere gets just thick enough to slow you down so much that you don't skip off.
Like a stone.
Yes. And then beyond Jewel is Ilu, which is the farthest object out. But now there's a whole lot more stuff because there are procedurally generated asteroids that show up like once every 5 minutes now.
Oh man.
So there we go. And I ran into a bug.
Oh.
So I flew past the planet that I should have been slowed down by. So no problem. Fortunately, we brought a shit ton of snacks. So we'll just do it again, and this time I'm going to slow down before we do this. And I think I even set up Kerbal alarm clock to tell me to stop this. So you notice our mission is 40 days long now.
Oh my god. Are you going to collect any extra science because of that, or is it just going to be like, yep?
It's just going to be like, yep.
Better have a month's worth of Netflix in there.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that Scott Manley always talks about, that he wants, because right now there's no penalty for putting a guy in a little cramped crew compartment that he can't do anything in. Like Scott Manley always says he wants a mod that makes the Kerbals go crazy if you don't have a habitation module or friends.
Yeah, I want to learn more about these things that we're sending into space. Do they love? Will they find love?
They may find love eventually. There is a mod that adds what the fans call Gerbils.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about Lady Kerbals.
Oh yeah, and finally I get the shot I want. You notice that our separated stage is starting to catch up with us as we're getting re-entry heat. Yeah. So it gets really hot, and suddenly.
Woo! Look at that.
Except I don't know what blew off of it.
It still go okay. It just exploded, and then
some part of it blew off. I don't know what part. Apparently it stayed integrated though. Sometimes you get lucky and the core part explodes and you see the other parts spread out with heat trails going behind them as the whole body disintegrates. I'm impressed that even with this, looks like Joemore is being subjected. You notice on the bottom right, there's that meter that has the green and the red.
Yeah.
That is a G meter. And currently we are being subjected to about 3 Gs continuously of deceleration.
Green Gs or red Gs?
Well, if you get to red Gs, then your guy is in risk of dying.
Okay.
So right now we're between green and red. We're at the point where it's uncomfortable but survivable. And it's actually for that reason that the guys are sitting upside down in the command pods, because both during ascent and descent, the G-forces will just suck the blood from their feet into their heads.
Ugh.
And so we blast off the heat chute, we deploy the heat shield and deploy the drag chute. And we make our safe return to the surface, and we decide to look around out that window that we can't see shit out of.
Yeah, when do we get better windows?
Actually pretty soon here. This mission returns a whole lot of science.
I can only assume.
Our crew capsule, so we still only have the one-man capsule. Because the 3-man capsule, for some reason, is just that much more complicated. But recently, I was able to get the B9 aerospace mod working, which I couldn't before because it took too much RAM. So I had to download.
And your computer can handle a lot, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's going on 7 years old, but it's got some power in it still.
You've taken good care of it.
So we earned 816 science from that. And now we're able to go and research a whole shitload of things. We got surface data, we got EVA report, we got so much mystery goo. So anyway, we have
Goo for days.
got goo for days. So anyway, we get supersonic flight, which gives us new, bigger fairings, which means we can launch bigger parts. Let's see, advanced aerodynamics, which adds a whole bunch of nose cones, but more importantly, we have specialized construction, which means we can start making space stations. And you notice also we add habitation. We have habitation modules in there. We also have advanced solar power stuff, which gives us bigger batteries and radiators and solar panels that orient themselves to the sun. Electronics, which adds new science instruments. Oh yeah, and crew exploration, which has things like ladders. So we add all the specialized construction stuff, which lets us build space stations now. Because we get docking modules and things like that. And then can't remember. Oh yeah, and the next part in the large electrics, we can actually start putting electric generators on here, which don't need solar power. They just run off of other fuels that we can find.
Other fuels.
Yes.
Hamster wheels.
And so we also get heavier rocketry, which gives us much bigger fuel tanks and much more powerful rocket motors. One of which we will see in a bit here. Oh yeah, so now that I have the B9 aerospace pack installed, let's build us a space plane.
Yeah! Let's try that again.
Yeah. So you notice that this actually looks a lot like the other plane, and that's just, I mean, when you get to planes, they just kind of start looking, when you get one effective design, you get the same effective design. So you notice now we have two sets of thrusters, one of which is, we have two jet engines and two rocket engines. And so we need the jet engines because we need to be able to get up to a very high speed while still in the atmosphere. But there's going to come a point if we're taking this into space where we're not going to have air anymore. So that's when we're going to have to switch over to the rocket engines, which are considerably less efficient. The jet engines have... Oh yeah, and then you see that yellow thing I put on there on the front?
Yes.
That is an emergency ejection system. So you notice here I'm also in this action groups tab briefly for a second, and that's because this is action groups. Basically they use the keys 1 through 10 on your keyboard, and you can push those and that'll activate and deactivate things. And for a space plane you need that because you need to have one group assigned to turn on your jet engines, you need to have one group assigned to turn on your rocket engines, you need to have one group assigned to turn on and off your air intakes, of which there are many on this because I'm planning on running this thing very high in the atmosphere. And that got very close to breaking off its jet engines. Spoiler warning, this is not a very well designed plane.
It still looks cool.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I love. The B9 aerospace pack they make planes that look super, super cool. Like half the parts in this are from B9. B9 also, they have super cool cockpits, which we'll see here a couple of times. And so, yeah, I'm probably going to fast forward through some part of this because most of the ascent is just watching the plane go up at about a 30-degree angle for 15 minutes.
Fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's truly an interesting thing to watch. And so, you notice around like 12 kilometers or so, we start lowering our ascent angle a little bit because we want to get to a high enough part in the atmosphere that we don't have a whole lot of aerodynamic drag, but we still want to be able to breathe air. Thanks. Really needed that on recording.
Thanks for doing your duty.
Yep.
They're working hard.
We're actually at 24 kilometers up, and you notice there that the plane started turning to one side slowly. And that's because one of my jet engines was about to burn out because it was running out of air, and the other jet engine had a little bit more power. And you have to keep a good eye on that while you're launching one of these, because if you don't, if you have twin engines, you'll run into something called an asymmetric flame out, which basically means one engine burns out before the other engine, which means you have an asymmetric amount of thrust, and that will put you into a lateral spin, which is bad. Very simply.
No.
So anyway,
I mean, you haven't really crashed and burned terribly
so
yet.
About 8 minutes later, and having burned about half our fuel, we managed to bring our apoapsis up to, if you notice on the flight engineer there, about 300 kilometers. And so we actually hit the airspace limit at 70 kilometers. And so let's take a look at the planet through our cockpit. Let's also take a look at the cockpit because it's so beautiful.
Beautiful.
So we flip it over and we.
I like that there's like a little bit of frost.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite little things.
It's a good touch.
So, and also, obviously, one of the main boons of space planes is that they're single stage to orbit, which means they're completely reusable. So as long as you can take them wherever you want and land them, then, a little bit of reprocessing, you can use them again. And so this mission is mainly to test how high up we can take a space plane, because like I said before, we're able to build space stations. So
yeah, our mission is to...
we're going to try and colonize the entire solar system. So we want to be...
habit some places.
So we want to be able to send guys up into space super cheap and move them around super cheap.
Can we build a space elevator?
Not right now.
Okay.
So anyway, we need to be able to see where the runway is. So I put a flag here. And also I realized I hadn't gathered science from the runway.
There's science to be gathered on the runway?
There's science to be gathered all around Kerbin. And also, if you notice, this is a different model of the space plane. And I forgot I did 2 different recordings. So you notice this one has a pre-cooler on the front. It makes it look super weird. The later versions don't have that. And that was the life support system exploding.
Well.
So good thing we're not planning on going back into space.
Yeah.
So I also installed the mod, the TAC fuel balancer, which lets me dump a lot of unnecessary fuels. So like one thing, when I come back in, I don't need the built-in oxidizer, so I just dump that immediately when I come back from orbit because it's just unnecessary weight. And so now we get to the part of just kind of waiting for this thing to slow down and trying to make it back to the Kerbal Space Center, which is the easiest to land at because it actually has a runway.
And you can see that runway because you put a flag there.
Yes.
Oh, so hey, it's kind of fitting that we're playing this right now. It just became midnight for me. It's got another hour to go for you. But happy Earth Day, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Today, remember to take your global selfie. That's NASA's whole thing right now. That you can take a picture of yourself and say where you are, and all the things say Earth.
That's adorable.
And then a satellite will take a picture of Earth. So just stand outside at a certain time, and you'll have your picture taken along with everybody on one half of the planet.
That's adorable. Too bad this isn't going to go up until, like, way after Earth Day is over.
You'll do it next year. All right, so we blew past the Kerbal Space Center by like a mile. So we're trying to slow down now by pitching the front up and exposing more of our wings to the wind, decreasing our aerodynamic stuff. And I realized later I shouldn't pitch up, because if you pitch up, that takes you higher into the atmosphere, and that means the atmosphere has less of an effect on your plane. So the thing that the space shuttle did when it re-entered is it basically did a series of S curves. They rolled it to the side, and then they pitched up to the side, which caused the same thing, except instead of going up and down, it went left to right, so it stayed in the same area of the atmosphere as it came down, so it was able to slow down effectively without moving up or moving down too quickly. Which it needed to land precisely, because once the space shuttle re-entered the atmosphere, it was only a glider. It dumped all of its fuel before it was done. And also it would be inadvisable. Oh yeah. So here's the problem with this plane. Is it's highly unstable, and it likes to fly backwards.
Oh, so are we just going to watch the death of a Kerbal right now?
No, I do manage to recover this one. Although you do
good.
notice there it says large-scale stall detected.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I have a whole lot of jet fuel, and I'm not actually moving that fast, and these engines are pretty powerful. So so basically, when you get out of control, you want to realign your position with your velocity vector, which I'm trying to do right now, because once you do that, you finally come back under aerodynamic control. So I have my plane realigned with my prograde vector, and so now we're going to begin a long process of flying back to the Kerbal Space Center, which is about like 200, 300 kilometers away or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So,
Well, I'm glad he didn't die, though.
and so, oh dear.
Oh.
This thing is highly aerodynamically unstable. It has a lot of faults that are corrected. Basically, there's a point in here. Yeah, we just went into a flat spin. There's a point in here. You notice I called this Dream Charger? There's a large
I didn't
series.
notice that before.
So I called it Dream Charger. There's a vehicle by the Sierra Nevada Corporation called Dream Chaser. That's basically their space plane. It doesn't take off. It doesn't take off horizontally. It's a vertical takeoff, horizontal landing space plane that's supposed to replace the capabilities of the space shuttle, at least for crew stuff. Between it and Dragon, we'll slowly get the capabilities of the space shuttle back for crew transfer and resupply. So yeah, this is called Dream Charger. There's a long series of test flights I didn't record that are called Dream Charger 1 through 4. And basically the thing I put on every Dream Charger is don't ask about Dream Chargers 1 through X. So anyway, we're 20 kilometers out from the Kerbal Space Center runway, and we're actually close enough now you can see it rendered on the map.
I see it.
And it's kind of neat that when
Is that also the moon up there?
Yeah, there's the moon up in the background there. This is cinematic shit.
Love it.
So one of the things that I did not realize until this time is when I knew when you took off from the runway or from the launch pad, there would be lights on your rocket. One of the things I didn't know is that there's little landing lights on the runway. So we're coming in to make our final pass. And I realize I have to come in fast because this thing is so aerodynamically unstable that it will go into a stall if it's going below a certain speed. So we start reducing our vertical speed a bit, and we do not reduce it enough. And eject!
Oh!
And deploy parachutes.
Wow.
But unfortunately, there were two
Give that
guys.
guy a medal.
There were two guys in that capsule, and you notice that there seems to be only one of them now.
No.
So rest in peace, Bill Kerman. No. You will be remembered.
You're gonna have to write his obituary.